How do candidates' background influence their campaign strategies? If that's your question, you are in the right place. I'm going to answer that 6 ways from Sunday, so stay with me, because a lot of what you are going to learn is very useful to you if you're running for office someday. Two broad topics that we're going to cover in this video. One is how your background affects your view of the world. And number two, how you turn that background that only you have into a unique selling proposition in a political campaign. 4 points about your background. And then the very first, you are a product of your journey. Whether you had 2 parents, 1 parent, perhaps no parent, whether you grew up rich or poor, whether you went to college or you didn't, whether you've had a blue-collar job or a white-collar job, your ups, your downs, your successes, your failures, you cannot affect everything about you and who you are and what you believe. Number 2, it also determines your moral code, your notions of right and wrong. You were not born with one. Everything you believe about good and evil and right and wrong, the just and the unjust, is a product of that journey that you've had. You were not born with it. The fact that you have one is a product of the experiences, the things you've seen, read, and heard during your time on earth. The third thing about your background is it determines what you consider a problem that needs a solution. It concerns what you regard as an evil that needs to be corrected. It determines what you think is fair in this world and unfair, which leads me to my 4th point about your journey, and it's this. There have been 110 billion people on this earth who have been born and who have died. Nobody, not a single one of those people, have ever walked in your shoes the way you have, who never have experienced a life journey quite like yours. You are unique in this world, and there isn't a single other person who has ever existed that is exactly like you. That makes you a special person. Now, how do you use this background during a political campaign? Well, because of your journey, you have expertise in something. You have done a job at your occupation. You know more about that occupation than your competitors. If you've been an attorney, if you've been an accountant, if you have worked in a factory, if you have been involved in research, or have you been a teacher or what have you, all of those things make you part of the unique person that you are, but it also gives you expertise in your point of view and in that profession in particular ways that things can be made better in the community where you may be running for office. How you talk about those experiences that you've had in life, the time when you may have lost a loved one, the time when your best friend died too young, the automobile accident that you may have had, the ups and downs that you've seen with friends who may have stumbled in life, the teachers you had, the way you were taught, all are part of the journey, and they form a group of stories that you can tell during the course of the campaign to let people know that because of the experience that you had and your exposure to a certain problem, that you are uniquely qualified to fix a problem that is relevant to them. A great story in a political campaign, well told, a story that demonstrates your passion for fixing a problem that is relevant to your audience, is one of the great ways to get people to trust you to do the right thing when you get into office. It is one of the questions voters love when a candidate answers. Why they can trust you. As you go through your life and think about all of your experiences, your ups and downs, the time you lost a loved one or a good friend, the time you may have lost a child, the time when somebody you knew died before their time. Inventory these experiences that you've had that no one else may have had. Because as you inventory these stories about your ups and downs through life, inevitably you're going to come up with one that meets this standard. Some experience you had that made you passionate about fixing a problem that is very relevant to the people whose votes you're trying to get. Is an important component in a political campaign message. If you can tell a story that lets voters know they can trust you to do the right thing when they're not looking, they will vote for you. Because so many candidates lie and so many candidates embellish. When someone comes along who is authentically someone who's willing to talk about their life experiences and how it can be used to make sure it doesn't happen again, you win on that trust meter, and it's gold in a political campaign. Another way to look at your background, and it's an exercise that we always go through in a political campaign when we're doing the strategy. We always line up every candidate in the race. We compare each other's biography. We compare each other's moral code. We look at each other's policy positions, and we look for ways to say something that no other candidate can say. That is how you figure out what your unique selling proposition is in a multi-candidate field. So line yourself up in a political campaign along next to your competition and ask yourself, what can we say about me? What can I say in this campaign that no other candidate can say? When you have discovered what that unique selling proposition is, embrace it, run with it, because nobody else running can say what you can say about yourself. I'll tell you a story to illustrate how this is done. It's a guy who came close to winning an election, but the fact that he even ran a competitive race in Rock Red, Nebraska, and almost beat an incumbent illustrates how powerful this was. Now, Nebraska is a very red state. It doesn't send many Democrats to the United States Senate. But there was a fellow who ran in 2024 who almost pulled it off. He'd never gone to college. He'd spent most of his life working in a factory. He was an expert on how factory workers are treated. He was an expert about the struggle that blue-collar workers have trying to raise a family, send kids to college, keep food on the table, pay for children's clothes and their medications, their health care. He came from a class of people that you find is a little bit unusual in U.S. Senate races, meaning he had no particular wealth to fall on. He couldn't pay for his own campaign. He had to raise every dime. He didn't know any billionaires. He just lived a normal blue-collar life and woke up one day and said, I have some things to say about how we are treating working class people. He also had some things to say about the American trade policy and how it's cost blue-collar workers their jobs. He also had something to say about blue-collar workers who live in rural parts of the country where they don't have access to high-speed internet, where they don't have access to modern conveniences that people do in urban areas. He became almost magnetic because it was so unusual in the United States to see someone run a competitive campaign who could speak the language of the class of people that he came from. He attracted hordes of volunteers. He attracted buku campaign contributions because people were moved by the way he talked about the plight of the American workers. That was his unique selling proposition. Had he done that in a different state that was not quite as red, he'd be a U.S. Senator today. So never underestimate the power of your background in a political campaign. Okay, I mentioned in this video one component of a campaign message. If you want to do all of this correctly, I hate to tell you this, but man, you need to watch another video that's going to supplement everything I just told you in this one. It's how to create a compelling campaign message. The link to that video is right underneath this one. I want you to watch it because it gives you a complete picture of what a campaign message is, how you construct one, and it's this simple. If you want to win an election, the most important component of it is your campaign message. It's about what you can say that lets voters know they can trust you, but there are 4 other components of your message that you need to know. So please do yourself a favor and go watch this now while this is fresh in your mind.